Hi, and thank you for joining today. Are you ready to halt hackers this holiday? Well, since they're quickly approaching, we thought it would be an ideal time to discuss the state of ransomware and what service providers like Columbus and Microsoft and others are doing about it. It is best practice to evaluate your security hygiene regularly and identify any gaps you might need to fill. You want to ensure your data and your employees and your brand are protected. So, over the next 30 minutes, my goal here is to share the most current information that I got, and we'll answer your questions at the end of this webinar. With that, thanks for being here. I hope you get something out of it. Let's review today's agenda and get into it. So, considering the radical change we've all been through since the pandemic, we'll start off by reviewing the impact it's had on organizations from a digital transformation and security perspective. We'll review the anatomy of a ransomware attack and explain why hackers love the holidays. I'll discuss 4 high-profile ransomware attacks that struck during the holidays of 2021. And if you're brave enough to stay with me after that, I'll try and calm your nerves and illustrate how Microsoft's leading the charge in defending against shifting front lines in zero-day and what I like to say, many-way attacks. And finally, I'll highlight the 4 key pillars used in today's InfoSec platforms built to protect you in a hyper-connected world. And we'll wrap things up with a brief overview of Columbus Care and our infrastructure managed services. I hope you'll stick around to the end for Q&A. We have some handouts and helpful links, and I'm going to review a 6-point list of immediate actions you can take now to prevent against ransomware. So let me ask you, how are you navigating the new normal? Let's face it, we are in unprecedented times. These challenges are not all related to the remote workforce, but also we're constrained by supply chain systems and shifting customer expectations. For example, look at remote workforce. Take virtual private networks, VPN, for example, which used to support somewhere between 20, 30, 40% of the traffic for remote users when they were away or traveling or working from home. Now, suddenly, we see 80%, 90%, and in some cases, 100% VPN. Additionally, the impact on our global supply chain has put pressure on traditional infrastructure deployments. Think about it. For one, new laptops or servers or computers weren't even being built in the marketplace. Look at Acer. We'll talk about that shortly. Number 2, we saw in many countries where mail stopped altogether. Organizations had to get creative and they had to learn how to use the cloud from a standpoint of deploying virtual desktops or allowing their employees to work from home and bring their own devices, all the while making sure that there were controls in place to ensure that those devices were secured. Many organizations were forced to rethink their tool set and their whole infrastructure. From an information security perspective, not only did they have to manage the security for their corporate environments and their different data centers, but they now are extending that security to third-party SaaS applications, third-party clouds, remote networks, and so on. Having that kind of complexity demands a modern set of products and tools that are integrated out of the box to provide widened visibility across a whole new attack surface. We saw many organizations that still have siloed systems or are behind in their digital transformation, completely blinded by this new widened perimeter. And that lack of visibility to see what the threat actors are up to, let alone the tools in place to defend themselves and stop them, has been quite a challenge. And you're probably saying to yourself, yeah, well, that's expensive. Yeah, certainly. The cost of breaches are expensive too. This is not just this year, but this has been going on for several years, and threats continue to escalate both in volume and sophistication. Hackers are very opportunistic, and they do not only strike during the holidays, but tailor their methods to capitalize on current events. Hackers were very quick to target the healthcare industry, for example, R&D organizations who were busy developing the vaccine. And they continued, even after the vaccine was developed, to target the supply chain, service providers, and our distribution and transportation systems. Eventually, about all the healthcare systems were under attack. So, with that said, next up, let's take a look at the anatomy of a ransomware attack. So human-operated ransomware, HORA for short, HORA, it's horrifying, really comprises three main components. There's the compromise phase, a distribution phase, and then the aftermath. So let me take a step back real quick and at a high level define what is ransomware. Well, it refers to malicious software that when it's deployed can prevent one from using your own computer. And to restore access to the system, you must pay a sum of money to cybercriminals or hackers. Ransomware is increasingly targeting the critical industrial sectors: oil and gas, finance, healthcare, food and beverage, transportation, the list goes on. And ransom attacks have increased in volume by 37% during the ongoing pandemic. And common vulnerabilities and exposure, or CVE, saw a jump of over 356% this year compared to 2019. SonicWall recorded an all-time high of 78.4 million ransomware attacks globally in June of 2021. So let me take you through this. From a HORA perspective, an attack typically starts with either obtaining credentials through RDP or secure shell on devices that are connected to the internet or through email phishing, what have you. The dark web is riddled with ransomware scripts, malware, comprised credentials. All of this is available, and the sophistication of this attack pattern has now hit the IT supply chain. We'll look at SolarWinds a little bit later. That happened at the end of 2020. Second, once the malware is installed, command and control is established and the compromised host or endpoint is infected, and we begin to see escalation of privilege and lateral movement. That's east-west traffic behind the firewall, typically inside the network, until domain dominance is established. At this point, the hacker will often camp out and identify sensitive data inside the organization, whether customer, employee, intellectual property, or even sometimes data that could be embarrassing to the organization, any of which could be held for a hefty ransom. Once they've identified the sensitive data or files, the attack is executed. Files are encrypted, software could be modified, data could be exfiltrated, websites could be defamed. You can go down the list. And if that's not enough, sometimes the hackers will execute a denial of service attack, or DDoS, at the same time, just to speed up the process of collecting their ransom. So the anatomy of a sophisticated attack like ransomware illustrates the importance of a multi-layered approach to mitigate a breach at any point along the attack surface and across the entire life cycle of the attack. The sophistication of this attack pattern has escalated steadily since the SolarWinds incident last year. Microsoft has warned that Nobelium, the hacking group behind the SolarWinds fiasco, has once again been spotted in May this year, and no less than 140 companies have been targeted, with 14 confirmed cases of compromise. The Advanced Persistent Threat, or APT group of Russian origin, has now pivoted to software and cloud service providers and resellers to piggyback on any direct access the resellers may have to their customers' IT systems. We'll talk a little bit more about this shortly. The bottom line is you have to protect your identity, your email, and your endpoints. To accomplish all of that, you really need to make sure you have the right tools inside your network or in the cloud to identify that lateral movement I discussed. And you certainly must protect your most important data to be able to quickly identify when that data is being exfiltrated. The good news is the cybersecurity community and companies like Microsoft and Columbus are reinventing defense in depth, an integrated, layered approach. And it's not just ransomware you're fending off, it also applies to any type of attack pattern. So now that I got the scary part out of the way, let me explain why it is hackers love the holidays. So let's go through this. Number one, reduce staff. Throughout November and December, many employees use this as vacation days to travel, visiting their family or friends. And this can leave an organization vulnerable because these employees that are meant to be guarding the fortress are no longer on site. The appeal to attackers is straightforward. Ransomware can take time to propagate throughout a network, so the longer it takes for anyone to notice, the more damage they can do. Even if it's caught relatively soon, many of the people in charge of dealing with this kind of thing are potentially poolside or, at the very least, hard to get a hold of. Reason number 2, employee online shopping. Let's face it, during the craziness of the holiday season, when everyone is short on time, who wants to hit the mall? And with the pandemic, that is even more relevant. No one. So it's no surprise that employees make some online gift purchases while at work. Unfortunately, they may be targeted by a malicious ad that's offering a hot deal. Without thinking, they might click on the ad and wind up infecting the entire network. In addition, employees working remotely can compromise security, as many are likely to be logging in from risky Wi-Fi hotspots and using devices that are not secure. Number 3, email overload. Inboxes fill up fast during the holidays. There's tons of emails from friends and family, holiday party invitations, purchase receipts, shopping confirmations, shipping confirmations. Because of this, employees, even those who have been trained to be wary of suspicious emails and links, are a lot more likely to put their guard down. Scammers know this and use it to their advantage. 4, use of personal email. Employees are much more likely to use their personal email during the holidays to do online shopping. But unlike company email, which is more likely to block suspicious links and attachments, personal email isn't usually filtered for malicious content. Number 5, password similarity. Most people have dozens of online accounts, and it can be a challenge to remember all of those passwords. Because the holidays are when most people access retail accounts, this gives hackers an in, hurting consumers, employees, or both. So let's now take a look at some recent high-profile examples of how bad actors have used ransomware to cash in on the holiday season. So as we look at some of the high-profile ransomware attacks in 2021, you'll probably recognize, if not all, some of these or most of these. SolarWinds, Acer, Colonial Pipeline, JBS, Kaseya even. But before I talk to some of those, I wanted to just share some numbers with you that I found researching this webinar. I found a report by Sophos. They say that the average bill for recovering from a ransomware attack, including downtime, people hours, device costs, network costs, lost opportunities, and finally the ransom actually that has to be paid, was $1.85 million in 2021. That's the average bill. And if you think that's expensive now, it's not predicted to get any cheaper over the next decade. Ransom could cost victims a collective total, according to Sophos, of $265 billion by 2031. To put that in perspective, that's about $820 per person in the US. That estimate is based on a prediction, and it's a fair prediction, that the price tag will increase 30% every year over the next 10 years. In fact, malware is so common that over 18 million websites are infected each week. The FBI estimates some more than 100,000 computers are infected by ransomware every day. The average ransom per incident has almost doubled. In 2018, the average was $4,300 per person. In 2020, it was $8,100, and total ransomware costs are predicted to go up $20 billion in 2021. And the reason that ransomware attacks cost so much is the time it takes for organizations, especially smaller businesses, to regain their data. Ransomware-induced downtime is often more costly than the ransom demand itself. If you forget or don't know the facts behind this one, it's pretty scary, because 200 organizations around the world, including multiple U.S. government agencies, were revealed to have been breached by Russian hackers who compromised the software provider SolarWinds. I included this even though technically it didn't occur in 2021. It was one of the most high-profile ransomware attacks in recent memory. It was in December 2020. When over 200 organizations around the world, including multiple U.S. government agencies provided by SolarWinds, and exploited their access to monitor internal operations and exfiltrate data. SolarWinds systems were breached, and an update for Orion software was poisoned and later deployed to 18,000 customers, about the seating capacity of Madison Square Garden. The advanced persistent threat then selected a small number of high-profile targets to exploit, including Microsoft, FireEye, and the Department of Homeland Security, and even the U.S. Treasury. After the malicious update was pushed through SolarWinds' legitimate channels, malware was planted on these systems, including the Sunburst backdoor. Taiwanese computer giant Acer was hit by a Revil ransomware attack in March of this year. The hackers demanded a whopping $50 million. They shared images of stolen files as proof of breaching Acer's security and the consequent data leak. These included images of financial spreadsheets, bank communications, and bank balances. And just this past month, Acer confirmed a cyber attack on its offices in India after hackers with the Disorban Group claimed to have breached servers and stolen 60 gigabytes of files. Although this next ransomware attack wasn't technically a holiday, it did occur over Mother's Day weekend and still timed for maximal convenience for the hackers. On May 6th, the Colonial Pipeline, the largest fuel pipeline in the United States, was the target. The energy company shut down the pipeline. The attack was attributed to DarkSide, a Russian-speaking hacking group, and Colonial later paid a $5 million ransom. And on the Friday heading into Memorial Day weekend this year, it was JBS, the world's largest meat processing company based in Brazil, was the victim of a ransomware attack. The attack shut down facilities in the United States, in Canada, and in Australia. It was attributed to the Russian cybercrime group Revil. On the Friday before the 4th of July, it was Kaseya. Russian hackers exploited a vulnerability in Kaseya's virtual systems, or VSA software, allowing them to deploy a ransomware attack on the network. This hack affected around 1,500 small and mid-sized businesses, with attackers asking for $70 million in payment. So, at this point, you might be thinking to yourself, I'm convinced the threat is real, so now what? Or, if companies like these are already being victimized by ransomware, what chance do I have? And if you're like me, you're asking, what are the tech giants, the FBI, and other cyber white hats doing about all of this? In my case, working for a Microsoft Gold partner, I turned to their experts for some hope and encouragement. And I'd like to share that with you now. So what is Microsoft doing about it? Let me take a moment and share some encouraging news. I heard this recently at one of their Security Days seminars, and I hope to calm your nerves a little bit after all that scary horror. They are aggressively mining mountains of rich telemetry and applying AI and machine learning to this data set. And they're doing this so they can understand what the threat actors are doing. And they're in a unique position in that they ingest and scan all of the services they provide, both enterprise and consumer services, which come in the form of up to 8 trillion signals a day. How, you might ask? Well, given their incredible breadth and depth and their ability to mine data from not only enterprise but consumers, their IoT platform, the massiveness is really how they accomplish this. They scan over 1 billion devices monthly. They analyze over 470 million emails, and that comes not just from Outlook, but also Live.com and even Xbox. And they have hundreds of third-party connectors to partners like Anomaly, Zscaler, Palo Alto Networks. So their reach is broad and their telemetry is massive. They do all this to ensure they have the most comprehensive set of intelligence. After applying their AI and machine learning models, they produce billions of predictions and millions of actions per month. All of that combined with their recent product integration is providing a holistic approach to this problem. There's automation, and there's a deep bench of cyber experts and threat hunters, all of which provide unique insights and a competitive advantage to combat not only today's ransomware, but future derivatives of it all across the globe. If you want to learn more about the petabytes of data they get from devices and PCs and servers and clouds and IoT, we'll provide resources at the end of the presentation. Microsoft recognizes that their customers are not only a Windows shop running Windows operating systems, but they have developed a heterogeneous environment that is made up of Windows, Linux, Mac, iOS, and Android. And finally, and this is pretty important, as the threats continue, both in escalation, in volume, and sophistication, it's impractical for organizations to continue to hire more staff because there's not enough resources to go around. AI and automation can only go so far to resolve well-known incidents, but it's still necessary to build that relationship with a global Microsoft partner like Columbus. We're well equipped to augment the scarce resource gap to help hunt and prevent the high-risk threats and events. At the end of the day, for me, I'm convinced the best people, the best partner relationships, the best strategies are all available to any business. Cybercrime can be stopped. And if engaged and used properly, we can protect your employees, your customers, your consumers from today's sophisticated threats, regardless of your current staff size or expertise. The best advice I can offer is to not bet blindly that they will not come after you or your business, because it's not a matter of if, but when. The biggest threat of them all is to ignore it. So now that we've looked at the new normal, we understand why hackers love the holidays. We took a look at the anatomy of a ransomware attack and some quite shocking real-world examples. I'd like to spend the remaining part of this webinar unpacking the 4 pillars of a modern security perimeter, give you a snapshot of Columbus Care and a list of immediate actions you can take to protect yourself today. And we'll leave you with some resources to take away with you as well. Now I'm going to briefly discuss the 4 pillars of information security. Now, these incorporate some basic principles of network security, such as authentication, authorization, confidentiality, and integrity, but don't confuse those principles with this framework. But they are woven throughout all of these pillars. Identity and access management. That's where most breaches start. They compromise identity, and it should be no surprise that the identity and access management is critical first level of defense. A robust authentication and authorization layer provides the basis for frontline security by adhering to conditional access, zero trust rules, and endpoint protection. Second, from a threat protection perspective, having the capability to detect and prevent attacks across email, across endpoint, as well as third-party SaaS applications quickly is critical to identifying and responding to intruders. We see some of the most sophisticated threat actors out there able to move laterally east-west inside the network within 20 minutes of compromising a host. At the end of the day, hackers are after your most sensitive information. That could be intellectual property, that could be customer data, that could be financial data or documentation about your plans and so on. So our customers have asked us to provide them with a capability to be able to identify all these types of sensitive data, no matter what it is or where it's at. So a modern security platform is designed to safeguard all your data across your entire enterprise. I like the term the enterprise of things, whether it resides on-premise, in the cloud, or even after it leaves your environment. Data loss prevention is a part of this pillar. Number 4, as I mentioned earlier, recognizing that today's business often work in multi-cloud or hybrid environments, the 4th pillar ensures a strong security posture to stand up against threats from anywhere. Having visibility and protection, whether it's in Azure, AWS, GCP, or more importantly, inside your on-premise environment is crucial. This is all about cloud security. We must protect our sensitive data and manage insider risk with intelligence. So I'd like to wrap up with a snapshot of Columbus Care. I'm going to give you a list of immediate actions you can take now to protect yourself. And like I said, after Q&A, we'll leave you with some resources and some helpful links that will further your knowledge and save you a few mouse clicks along the way, and ultimately help keep you and your companies safe during the holidays. So for those of you new to Columbus Global or Columbus Care, we are a Microsoft application and infrastructure managed services company. We've been doing business for 30 years plus now. We are a gold partner with Microsoft. We have a very strong partnership with them. And the fact that we are truly a global operation means that we have experts across the globe supporting multinational corporations today. And as a Microsoft Gold partner, we offer industry-specific solutions and support powered by Microsoft technology, including ERP, CRM. So our managed services, Columbus Care, it's a Microsoft application and an infrastructure managed service offering covering proactive managed services, reactive support services, and as-needed consultancy services. As I mentioned before, we are a global enterprise with 24/7 access to IT, application, and industry experts. We have a follow-the-sun model of support and bring a strong understanding of industry and business processes. Whether you're looking to outsource basic IT tasks or facing a complex cloud migration, we can do as little or as much as you need. That being said, I want to wrap up with showing you the immediate actions you can take now to protect against ransomware. This is a 6-point list. Much of it is obvious, but it might remind you of a couple things, all the way from backing up your data, securing your RDP, patching your operating systems, and please enable multi-factor authentication. And finally, here's a list of some bookmark-worthy websites and PDFs packed with useful information on ransomware, including Microsoft's Threat Intelligence Center and the Joint Cybersecurity Advisory Alert. And before we get to your questions, I'd like to officially announce our holiday gift to you is a free Columbus security assessment. Click on the link for more details and let us talk to you about how we can help protect your organization this holiday season. If you enjoyed this webinar, be on the lookout for future security-related events from Columbus. And if you had specific topics that you'd like to discuss, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can leave a comment in the chat or contact me directly. I just want to say thank you again for your attention. And now I will turn it back over to our host for Q&A.